Alright, how's it going today, everybody? So, in this video, we're going to be doing something that I haven't seen on YouTube yet. I've seen plenty of tier lists ranking superheroes, foods, different TV shows and things like that. But I've never seen one that gets down to the real fundamentals of what it means to be human. So today, I'm going to be reviewing the 15 different senses that I think you could either go without or you couldn't. Starting from S tier, which is kind of necessary to survival, to F tier, which is something that I'm convinced not everybody has in the first place. So let's get right into it. All right, let's start off with what I think are the honorable mentions, because I'm not even sure everyone has these senses. At the very bottom, sense of style. I know some of y'all don't have that. I think I would be okay with getting rid of that, because as much as I like looking good, if it comes down to being able to walk or looking good while I'm walking, fuck the clothes. Common sense. It's like showers and deodorant. The people that need it don't use it. I swear, common sense is such an uncommon thing these days. I don't know. I think it should be called something else, because it's definitely like a learned skill, or like it can be like accrued, because it's not something that everyone has, for sure. Common sense, the ability to like reason your way through don't even get me started. I don't think I personally would get rid of that one so quickly, but I think because it is something that so few people actually have, we can say that that one can be gotten rid of. Sense of humor. Again, something not everyone has, and I'm finding that out more and more as I get older. I would much rather have humor longer than a lot of other things, because it'll help you get through misfortune a lot better. If all of a sudden you can't walk, at least you can make jokes about it. It's much better than being able to walk and being a stick in the mud. Next, we're going to get into the more subjective ones. So the ones that are past the traditional five senses, but it's still something that you definitely know that every human being has. Sense of time. Or rather, chronoception, the ability to analyze time passing. This one, I think you could get rid of. Like, it still definitely has a good use, but I think with how things are today, as long as you still have, like, memory, right? Or, like, the ability to schedule, I think you would still be just fine. Because if we're talking about the people who have such short-term memory loss that every single day is a brand new day to them, I don't think I could do that one. Or if I were to like lay down and take a nap, it's fine if I don't know that 2 hours has passed. But if I set an alarm, do I recognize that I still have to get up because there's any sense of urgency? I would also like to see if there are any cases of people who don't have a sense of chronoception. If they're just living like, I don't know, fairly or whatever, if they never got taught what time was. I think that would be really interesting to ask them what they think of like yesterday. Temperature, or thermoception, which is part of interoception. It's the ability to recognize the temperature of things, or to regulate your body temperature. This one would definitely have some drawbacks. Like you're far more susceptible to heat stroke or, like hypothermia, because you do not regulate your temperature and do not feel the need to, or you would touch a hot stove or whatever. But I think this one's pretty okay. Like, as long as you stay at like a reasonable temperature and don't touch hot or cold shit, honestly, I think that one's fine. You can get rid of that one. It would probably make a lot of people more comfortable, if we're being honest. The ability to perceive pain, or nociception. This one I think is kind of necessary. I don't know. I think it's definitely more helpful than a lot of the other ones. But I also don't think that it is an inherent need of a living creature to be able to experience and recognize pain. And like, yes, you don't want to cut yourself and not feel it and then bleed out. You don't want a kid who will just hit their head repeatedly on the floor because they don't feel it. Things like that. There are definitely, like, it would be detrimental to not have, But if I had all of my other senses, I think that one would be pretty, like, it would be pretty mild if you were to get rid of it. I could definitely schedule my life around that. Versus some of the other ones, that's completely life-changing. If I just all of a sudden couldn't feel pain, like if I accidentally break my wrist or something, that might suck because I wouldn't recognize it as much, but I also wouldn't feel breaking my wrist. I don't know. That's one of those 50-50 ones that I think anyone could kind of go left or right. It could either be a superpower or a crippling thing. Next, I'm going to step into the 5 traditional senses and get rid of one that I think I could do without. Smell. Or your olfaction. Out of all 5 of the traditional senses, that's definitely the one I could go without. Not because I don't like smelling things. You know, smelling a wonderful perfume or flowers or a baked good is immaculate. You know, the breeze on a warm day smells amazing. Petrichor when it rains. There are so many good smells out there. But I also feel like it wouldn't, besides changing my taste a little bit because I wouldn't have as accurate of a profile, I really don't think it would change my life that drastically. I would buy less candles. I probably wouldn't worry about like the smell of my cooking, so I would save time with that. You know, I would make sure I wear more deodorant all the time just because I wouldn't be able to guess. And you know, but I think I could go without smell. Yeah, then you could get some really high-paying jobs, like crime scene cleaner or like industrial chemist. It just doesn't bother you. Yeah. And then directly following that one, due to like the usefulness, right? The actual applicability of each of my senses and how much I use them. I think next would have to go taste. As much as I love eating, I adore eating, food is one of my passions. I think I would have to get rid of gustation after olfaction. Just because now we're getting into the things that are really like fundamentally important to be able to survive. And I think tasting things was definitely like an evolutionary advantage. To know that the cooked meat tasted better than the raw meat. To know that the edible berries tasted better than the poisonous ones. I would never have to like say anything mean about anyone's food ever. How was it? Great. Really? No idea. Would never complain at a restaurant, but this does open you up to the chance of like disease. You know, if you eat a hamburger and you're like, oh yeah, I couldn't taste it at all. It was fine. But then it actually had some like, it was undercooked or whatever. I don't know. I think taste is one that I would miss, but it's not one that I could live without, and I can't say that about some of the ones on this list. Tactician, or touch. Not being able to feel things would suck. Not being able to feel the clothing on your skin, or to like cuddle up under warm blankets with someone and to both feel the warmth of the blankets and like the softness of their skin. You know, to never feel grass again or like a animal's fur. It would be horrendous to never feel the softness of like a flower petal. To not feel the steering wheel as you're driving. To not feel the pushing the accelerator with your foot. Like that would all be scary. To never feel the breeze on your face. To never feel food touching your tongue. To hold hands with someone and not feel it. That would be kind of terrifying. But it also doesn't really change your life. You can still do everything. You just don't feel it. So like, also could be dangerous to your health. You know, touching a hot stove, you know, touching fiberglass, not recognizing it, whatever. It's not like you can still work, live a normal life, blah, 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 and just not feel anything. As terrible as it is, it like that one you could probably get rid of. It would just be terrible. You know, to grab a door handle, to turn it, to leave a room and never feel anything. That would probably get terribly dissociative. To never feel, period. To never feel. Here's where we're getting into the like very core, fundamental, necessary things to be a human being. Next, I would probably get rid of proprioception. Like my body in relation to other things in space, because I can use my other senses to just cheat that, kind of. Like, if not knowing where my body is in relation to the chair that I'm sitting on, I can still look and see that I am on the chair. I can still feel that I am on the chair. If I am trying to throw a ball into a basket, I can still see where the basket is. I can still feel that I'm holding the ball. You know, it's just the actual spatial relationship between the two. You know, if I stand up and go to walk out of this room, I wouldn't know where my body is but I can still see. And like bump into stuff. So it's like not that terrible. And it's different from one of the next ones, which we're going to get into. But knowing where things are in relation to your body, I think, like with this microphone, for example, I don't need to use my proprioception to know that it's here-ish. I'm holding it, and I have eyes, so I can place it in space. It might be different. Maybe I'm oversimplifying it. I would love to hear from any of the people that have any of these like disabilities. I don't know if you could even call it that. It's just different lifestyles, because not all of these would like make you unable to do things. And the difference between disability and a handicap is, I think a lot of that would come down to how you try to live with these, because the disability is the blindness. The handicap is what the society around you does not help you with because of your blindness. You know, so the inability to walk or ambulate is the disability. The handicap is having to ride in a wheelchair and there not being a ramp on the curb. So I'm trying to come from it from that perspective of which of these would actually like have the biggest detriment to my life. And I think after this we actually get into it makes it harder to do everything else. The proprioception, being able to know where I am, I think I can cheat that one. The next ones after that, I think you just kind of miss out if you don't have it. Your sense of like direction and momentum and your body actually moving, your vestibular movement. So knowing that my arm is moving right now, knowing that my mouth is talking. I think if I didn't have that one, that would be freaky. If I did not consciously recognize the ability to move my body. I don't know how much this affects people. I was just looking into your different senses because I was thinking about what would it be like to lose one? Or if someone were to ask you, would you give one up? Would you? I suppose I'd never thought about this one before, but it does make sense that the brain would have to recognize that you are doing things. It's very different to recognize where you are in relation to everything else. But to know what you are doing while in relation to everything else is really crucial, I think. With the example from earlier, I don't need to know where this microphone is in relation to my body because I can hold it and see it. If my body doesn't know to hold the microphone or talk into it, I think that's something else entirely. I think that is fascinating. I'd love to talk to someone who doesn't have that ability or has a limited ability in being able to actually like recognize momentum and direction and like your sense of movement. Because I'm not just talking about like wheelchair bound people or people who need assistance with movement. That's very different. It is your actual recognition of movement. I think that's interesting. Unless I'm wrong. Please correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. Now we're getting into the final four, which I think all of these are really debatable. Like very, very debatable from now on. After this, it is entirely personal preference as to the one that you would want to keep longest. I think the one I would be willing to get rid of next would be the sense of self, or the ego. And you'll see, I'll explain more once we get into the next ones. But this one, I feel like this one is just like a defense mechanism. I feel like this one doesn't actually have much function. Because your ego, your sense of self, is, what makes you intrinsically you. But it is only an internal thing. Like, there is no external sense of the self. Like, what I'm talking about right now is that sense that at, 3 a.m, you'll sit there and be like, wow, what is the universe? What am I in relation to the universe? I don't know what that is. Like the conscience? I don't know if that's a sense. Because touching, tasting, smelling, those are all, I don't know what it is to have an identity. I think that would be a part of it. I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments. Because that one I kind of put in there as, would you get rid of it in order to preserve other ones? Because there are again, getting into the sentience issue, a rock, I would assume, doesn't have ego. We could be wrong. Everything could be mildly sentient. Everything could blah, 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 blah. Separation only exists from the internal perspective. If a rock can function just fine without an ego, why couldn't we? I think it wouldn't be terrible to be a rock or a tree. A tree's a living thing, but I don't know if those redwoods out in the redwood forest are like, I am a 4,000-year-old tree. I don't know if they do that. Being able to communicate that you have an ego is very clearly not necessary for survival. All right, top 3. These are the big ones that I think it would be hard for me to give up any of them, if we're being honest. The top one is definitely my top one for a reason. But I could see anyone having these 3 as their top ones. Sense of self-preservation. So feeling hunger, thirst, discomfort, or just interoception. Very necessary for survival. I think that one trumps most of them, honestly. Because whether you feel pain or not is very different from if you do get burned on the stove, treating it. If you do get burned and then going, I don't care, that's an issue. Being poisoned and not feeling any sense of discomfort from that's an issue. Not eating in 11 days because you don't feel hungry, that's an issue. It's a manageable thing, I would feel like, once you get to sentience. But there's no way that a newborn could make it to that with those type of things. If a baby didn't cry ever, you'd be terrified. Is it tired? I don't know. Is it hungry? I don't know. Is it thirsty? I don't know. Does it have, is it uncomfortable because of its diaper? I don't know. Because it doesn't know. That would be terrible. It's the sense of self-preservation, I think. This is why it's hard for me, is because my top 3 all kind of boil down to that, is what would keep me alive the longest if I could only have one of them? I don't know. We'll just discuss the top three, and then I'll go back to my thought that I was having. So my next one would be sound, or audition. As someone who already has, like, probably 50% hearing loss in my left ear, I think I could live learning sign language and, like, just being more aware of my surroundings and constantly looking around and, you know, not driving because not being able to hear, like, the traffic and things in my proximity. I think I could definitely be deaf before I became blind. I think the only thing that has me like, is there's so many things to hear. Like music or dialogue, you know, the words of someone saying "I love you." I feel like those are things that it would be really hard to not have again. But I know it's livable. That's the thing. I think that's the issue, is it would be wanting to hear and not being able to, but it wouldn't actually, like, ruin my life. Yeah, I can use a vibrating alarm clock. You know, I can use subtitles on the TV. I do already. I can, you know, get some really, really loud headphones and feel the bass on my head, or do bone conduction. You know, there's plenty of different things that we have going on. I think it would be, that is one of the ones where if you got rid of it, it would be at a detriment to the actual, like, well-being of your life. If you couldn't feel yourself touching things, that's fine. You can still function normally. If you didn't hear someone break into your house, you're screwed. Number one for me, sight. 100%. I think I would have such a hard time losing my vision. And in the same way that there's so many things that you want to hear, so many songs you want to hear, so many people you want to talk to, I think that is exponentially more for vision. You know, just walking through a single garden probably has more variety than half of the music I listen to. Like the variety in color, the variety in everything. I think it would be so hard to give up being able to see, because it changes how you interact with everything. You know, if I couldn't feel pain, I would be more careful cooking, you know, because I don't want to burn myself or cut myself. But I can still, like, make sure I don't do those things. Imagine if you just couldn't. You know, if you're walking around, you accidentally bump the stove, you don't know that it turns on, you turn around to put your pan down, fire's been on the whole time, you wouldn't know. Can't see. You go to grab a knife from the block and someone wanted to put it backwards, so you grab a sharp knife, you wouldn't know. Pouring liquids, I know that we have, you know, like, you can hold the top of the glass and obviously feel it, and we have little things that'll beep when you, like, it would just suck. I would actually love to be able to have a conversation with some visually impaired people, because I think that is so telling of the human condition and its level of perseverance, that you literally are limited from your ability to interact with the world around you due to not actually getting the stimuli of the world around you, and you still make it work. It's a very vulnerable, and I think that's what it is. This entire video was actually Michael's therapy session, finding out he has problems with vulnerability. No, I think that's the thing, is it would be so reliant on not yourself. Like, you could be self-sufficient with it, but there's only so far you can go. maybe if it wasn't the 21st century, things could be like, okay, you know, if you were the what was it, the blind man who in Frankenstein, if you just lived in a hut in the woods and, you know, knew what food you were growing, knew where the well was in relation to your house, you know, knew where the fireplace, and if you were well accustomed to your surroundings and you knew you could pick dry wood to put in the fireplace, you knew you could pick berries or whatever to, you know, you could drink, maybe. But I don't know, I've also had a thing with like Metallica's One, which is based on Johnny's Got His Gun, and the Eye of the Beholder episode from The Twilight Zone, where being completely shut off from the outside world, I think, is one of the most terrifying things. And I think the biggest door that closes with any of these is definitely sight. Yeah, because if you were to watch a movie, for example, if you were to watch a movie and you couldn't feel the remote when you were turning the movie on, it doesn't affect the movie at all. If you were watching a movie and you couldn't smell or taste the popcorn, it doesn't change the movie at all. If you were watching the movie and you couldn't hear the movie, you could still turn on subtitles and you could still watch the whole movie. It might not be as enjoyable, but you can still do it. Imagine watching a movie, but it is just the audio. How enjoyable was the movie? It's not a movie at that point. And that's kind of how I view things. Is I know that we have, you know, like, what is it, ADR, so that it'll tell you what's going on. The man fell off the side of the building. It's very different from seeing it. Very, very different. But these top three, the sight, the being able to hear, and the sense of self-preservation. I'm starting to realize I put self-preservation and interoception at number 3. That might actually be number 1. Because the reason I would be most terrified of losing my sight or my sound is because it would make self-preservation harder. Like, I think if I didn't care about waking up tomorrow, I wouldn't care if I was blind. You know, oh, I walked into traffic. Oh, darn. Oh, I accidentally lit the house on fire. Whoopsie. But, yeah, no, I'm starting to think that interoception's kind of the more important one. But sight would be the most, like, devastating. Because I think you could have no sense of self-preservation and still, like, live normally. You just have to, like, it's just a little, like, psychopathic. You know, I must eat on a scheduled amount of time or I will die. Not, I'm hungry. You know, I have to sleep for an allotted amount of time or else it will be detrimental to my health, versus I'm tired. You know, I have to rest because my body is fatigued, and if I don't, it's detrimental. Is different from I'm pooped. You know, like, but I think you can still make it without wanting to make it to tomorrow, you know? Like, oh, I don't know. I think these top 3 are definitely interchangeable. But I think for me, the one that I would get rid of last is probably vision. Just because there's so many things to see. And I think I would be more content being wheelchair bound and deaf and not being able to taste my food as long as I can, like, sit in a museum and look at the artwork. Versus feeling as though I'm, like, in a cave of darkness forever. You know, would you give up a sense if it made another one more powerful? So yeah, here's the tier list. S to F. Let me know what you would agree with, disagree with, what you would move around. And thank you for making it to the end of this video. So tell me, what senses do you think are the least used and most used in your day-to-day? Or, if you have any ideas for videos that you want to see in the future, drop them down below. we may just talk about it. Peace.